So I was just ending on a very critical, crucial um, point of time where we learned that Western Rome, is going to fall to um, Germanic peoples, the Vandals, the Vandalizers, right? Um, it gets sacked in 455 CE, and then West Rome ceases in the late 5th century as a ruling empire. And this is significant, but so in terms of Western civilization, we see this occur. And remember, as you saw in the textbook, there was a lot of debates. There has always been debates about the exact reason and the nature. Was it allowing Germanic so-called barbarians into the Roman world? Was it the actions of the Romans and their own corruptions? Blah blah blah. There was like a lot of different theories, and I'm not going to solidify any of those for you in this discussion. But needless to say, the Western world kind of falls apart from the order that it was in. It's going to reshape itself, but the legacy of Rome on the West is now permanent at this point, and we'll see how that operates later on. Okay, um, if you look as if you look in the chapter, and also just kind of talking about the British Isles as it collapses. The Romans went all the way out into the British Isles, and they leave, and in the collapse, there are invasions of Germanic peoples into the British Isle, and one group is the Anglo-Saxons. And this is significant for us in Western civilization because Anglo, as in English, the language I'm talking to you in, is going to be a byproduct of this. And if you saw that interesting little short brief mention that King Arthur was one of the last resistance, a Christian Britain Roman elite, if he really existed, being a freedom fighter, kind of trying to protect the British Isles from pagan Germanic invaders. And those were the Anglo-Saxons, who eventually are going to become Christian themselves and be integrated into this. But it's interesting, and I just wanted to kind of briefly walk away from this. Since we're talking about Western civilization, I might even revisit this and show you this video again later on. But later, one of the oldest poems in the English language is Beowulf. Many of you were exposed to this in high school. And the poem of Beowulf reflects on the past of these. It was written by somebody who believed in Christianity already, but Christianity kind of just fuses itself in a certain way. But ultimately, there's a lot of pagan values in there, kind of mixed with Christian values. But what I think is interesting is just to hear what Old English sounded like, and to remind ourselves of our past. So I'm kind of taking a little bit of a break away from this chapter, since it kind of mentions this, and since I'm giving you this lecture in English, I thought I would play what English actually sounded like originally for you, and I think you might be a little bit shocked. So here's Beowulf in the original language, and the setting of it was, and by the way, Denmark and Sweden. So English comes really oriented around the Scandinavian world. And, Vikings are eventually going to disrupt the British Isles and the Anglo-Saxons, but essentially the Anglo-Saxons and the Vikings had a lot more similarities than not. Anyways, here we go.
sällen främmedon. Oft skyldskiving tjäderna 13 måniga nähom. Modo sättla och tär. Hej, så det äras. Sedan är det sved färsett funnen. Hej, dess fråvriga barn. Werks under volknum, werf myndum thach. Och that him I wish that a hulsitendra over rondrada huransolo. Gonbangelden, that was good, König. Them ever was after Kenneth Young in Jardon. Och när God sände folket och frågade. Fyren därifrån gärd, där här är drugen. Alldeles. Lange hvile. Him thas livre, wulder swellend, world are for years. Beowulf was breme, blad, weede, sprang, skyldeshevere, skedelandum in.
Wow, right? So our language is closer to Norwegian and Swedish as a Germanic tongue than you might have realized, right? But our language has evolved a lot and our culture has evolved a lot. I just thought that was significant to realize because as we're talking about Western civilization, we're going to revisit the British Isles. For us in this part of the world is a very significant part. And at the time that Rome is falling apart, the creation of the British Isles, for better or for worse, is taking place in the shape that is going to influence things, and what we as Americans are only here because of the byproduct of the British world that is going to evolve. So something I just want to kind of a side note in context, a little bit off on the side. Okay. So then what's left? Germanic Europe then is what we get in the West. And when we say Germanic, I mean that many of Europe are related to Germanic language, Germanic peoples, Germanic tribes. Germany is going to be what we just think of as German, but no, our language is related to German. Remember, Franks is where we're going to get France. Okay. Deutschland is what German is called in German. It means people's land, essentially, from the old German, land of the people. Essentially, this is going to formulate a very complicated Europe, okay? And then there's the eastern part. And so again, I think it's kind of interesting how we in the West, we've just kind of almost ignored, so for many of us to not, don't think about the Eastern Roman Empire and Eastern Roman Christianity, and even though that it's really going to outlive the West in a certain way, but then it's going to become absorbed by Islam, which again we'll cover in the next section. So who then takes over? Who's significant and what's significant going on in the East? Justinian and Theodora, as I mentioned in the textbook, ruling around the 6th century. What does he do? He codifies Roman law. And this is end up going to be crucial for even the West later on. He attempts to reunite the empire, okay? But bubonic plague really messes things up. Plagues, what are you going to do with plagues? Plagues are out of our control and everything just falls apart. So that was that. Ultimately, it was going to focus more and more on its Greek legacy. I believe he was the last emperor then to be able to speak Latin. And so Eastern Rome is really a Greco-Roman world, and just linguistically is going to be not even to be able to communicate with the Western part in the way that they can communicate with each other in the East. Okay, so this is the empire of Justinian, and he does take parts of the West back, but again, it's more complicated. And again, I want to remind you that North Africa is incorporated into this as well. Again, we keep taking that for granted. And so I'm going to actually stop this. The lecture is going to end here. I'm actually going to go back. I'm going to then incorporate some other videos in with my lectures to kind of help enhance some more visuals for you guys on this. I think this is very critical history. I think that this understanding is going to be so important for you to really visualize more in a way that makes you an advanced student of Western civilization. And so I'm going to end here, and then I'm going to incorporate some videos which I want you to do with your notes as well. Okay?